Right, welcome back everybody. I hope you made the most of the 40 minutes, which seems to have flown by, but some great conversations out there. And we're obviously off the back of a great opening with all the data sets that we saw and the facts and figures and the conversations which took place. We now kind of, if you like, translate that across to the real world. So finding out a little bit more about managing EVs in the real world. But before we do, phones at the ready. Let's have ourselves another Slido poll or word cloud on this occasion. So, what area do you see as the greatest challenge with EV claims? Punch in your words, hopefully keep them decent for an audience. And we'll let that build. Look at this. Yeah, oh, okay. It's coming to life now. All the Thatcham guys would be happy with that skills one. Cost. Here we go. We'll let that one continue to build. Can we do another one? Can we do the opportunities one? So let's flip that on its head. And let's go then. What areas do we see as the greatest opportunity? I was just about to say everyone's been very well behaved so far, and then booze crops up. Not quite sure where that's come from or what that means exactly, but there we go. Somebody usually mentions their company name in there anyway. Right, superb, great stuff. Okay, we will scoop all that up, as I say, and we will take that away. But great session now then. So we've got Martin Burbidge, not Franco. Stepped in for us last minute. Thank you very much, Martin, from Jaguar Land Rover. We've got Jeff Mack, who's an alternative fuel consultant, and we've got Vic Turner of Activate Group. So we'll bounce the questions around, and what we're trying to do with this session is just find out a little bit more, both in terms of, if you like, what is the guidance for vehicles, vehicle repair, vehicle claims, management, handling, and also kind of how that is translating across to the real world, what it actually means for those out in the field. Some very passionate speakers. We've got half an hour, so it's going to be quick fire questions. And if anyone wants to find out any more in terms of what these guys mentioned, obviously grab them during the lunch break. So, Martin, first of all to you, an EV, vehicle manufacturer, EVs are obviously now the thing. Everyone has turned their attentions to EVs. What's different about it? What's different about an EV then when it comes out into the market and in terms of claims processing?
Well, firstly, I think looking at this morning's session, I have to say, brilliant, fantastic. Adrian and Dean, thank you for saying everything. I don't need to say anything anymore because you covered it all, so well done, thanks for that. Yeah, massively different, I think, from a vehicle manufacturer, and obviously with their goals, the challenges to hit all the environmental levels. Also looking at customer experience, and customer experience will always be the way for a manufacturer. And it's putting that into infrastructure, really. Once you've built these vehicles, then comes the way how you publish all that material, how you then train your network of staff in service and in body. An electric vehicle is completely different, much heavier, as the guys this morning have said, very, very complex in the way after an incident, which obviously I'm sure Jeff will go into a lot more detail, how that comes into the authorised repairers. Sometimes we see vehicles bouncing around, which we discussed, haven't we, very briefly, for 4 weeks, and then it comes into the correct repair shop. And the length of time then. So what has changed? It's more difficult. It requires extra processes, extra touch points. Does the vehicle need to be powered down? If it does, there's going to be extra touch points. which all then contribute to the cost, etc. So from a manufacturer's point of view, it's really about driving and making sure that the retailers and the network are able to safely power down and repair vehicles, and that's the aim, and all manufacturers are going through training and pushing their technicians through training in all levels. We work on EVIP, which is informed, and then we have a competent person to be able to remove components. We have authorized person to be able to power the vehicles down, and we have the EVSAP, which is open power, open battery. I don't foresee any body shops working on open battery. And just basically agreeing with what the guy said this morning, I think it's really important. There will be differences between each manufacturer training, because no manufacturers have all sat in the room and decided we're all going to build them in the same way. It's something we spoke about years ago, Dean, and we've used it a couple of times about years and years ago. Anybody remember was it Betamax and VHS? Yes, exactly. And Philips, and they all went off their own way and built these video players, and it was only one of them ended up, and it was VHS, and that was the norm. So, but no manufacturers have all got in a room and decided this is what they're going to do. They all go off and do their all sort of nuances. However, training and skills is key, because we have our own training. However, going on an IMA course or Thatcham course, etc., if that is building knowledge and experience for our technicians, because we do have a shortfall. That was huge today. I thought we had a smaller shortfall than that, but if you're telling us it's that's an issue, because we are not replacing those technicians within our body shops. So knowledge and skills is going to be the key, I think, going forward. And managing the repair throughout the process. Heavier, immobile vehicles with damage to the batteries. Very, 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 very different. Baking cycles, the use of low energy paints, so you don't have to increase your baking size. We're all working through this, and this is one of the things we're doing. Are you doing a bonding test after you've built the vehicle back up together? Extremely important. These things all have to be looked at. But there we go. Somebody said to me this morning, is it the highway to hell, or maybe is it bad to good? I'm not sure.
Right. Let's call that a conclusion for the time being. So we are kind of on the journey, if you like, the claims journey. So we moved from the vehicle manufacturer themselves, who puts the vehicle into the market, to Jeff, who is heavily involved in the sort of recovery, first on scene, ethanol type process, in the health and safety and training in that area. So I know you're extremely passionate about this in terms of what goes on, what can happen to an electric vehicle. So tell us, in terms of that kind of person, first on scene, ethanol response, how is that being impacted? How is that changing?
Okay, thanks, Mark. Firstly, Dean, he wasn't calling you old. You're like me, same age as old people. I have to give credit to one of your partners, Nationwide Vehicle Assistance, because it's whilst working for them on a day rate that Mick Jennings, the MD, asked me to look into this, because he has numerous vehicle manufacturer approvals, truck manufacturers, bus, etc., and has had the contract across Europe for a very large EV manufacturer for many years. So he recognised that it's a real game changer when you get to a scene. And the key message of the training we developed from that journey is know what you're dealing with and how to deal with it. And I teamed up with a guy called Richard Dunbar, who's a 74-year-old former fire chief, former police sergeant, authors the ADR manuals, which is transportation of dangerous goods across Europe. And we looked at all the training that was available, this is going back 3 or 4 years, and felt for the particular piece we're looking at, which is when these things go as bad as they possibly can, which is rare. But when there's accident damage, or as Dean pointed out, if there's damage to a battery casing underneath the vehicle, it becomes suspect. And We eventually developed a 7-hour IMI course, which enables recovery drivers to stay safe at the side of the road and, as importantly, to keep the customers safe. But the key point is really when the ethanol comes in, is to know what you're dealing with at that point. Because if the ethanol comes in and you haven't identified the propulsion of the vehicle, and you then put it out via a portal or a call to a recovery operator, and they haven't done their piece in checking the propulsion of the vehicle, which is made more difficult because the green flash on the number plate, sadly, is not mandatory, it's optional. And you need to identify what you're going to deal with. Now, with our drivers, when they get on the scene, you need to have sent the right truck and the right person who's qualified to deal with a scene where there may be potential battery damage. And then the other issue is, we did some training for Merseyside Police back in February, so we trained the stolen vehicle unit, crash investigation team, forensics, and we always go through what are the potential causes of fire and thermal runaway and all the rest of it. It's not actually a fire, it's a plasma event. It will burn up to 2200 degrees and burn through concrete and burn underwater. So it is a whole new ball game. I'm not trying to scaremonger. But when you get to a scene, the most important thing is know what you're dealing with. If the fire brigade have been there first, or the ambulance, or the police, we teach people stand your ground because they want the scene cleared quickly. And you need to say to the police or the fire or the ambulance, whoever arrived there first, we have a form that's laminated as a guide for the drivers to say, what has been done to this vehicle? Have you measured the battery temperatures? Has there been any emission of grey vapour, which is hydrogen fluoride gas? And if there has, get away from it as quickly as you possibly can. If I can give you one example, and I'm not trying to scaremonger, just to reinforce how important this particular piece is. A 1 kilowatt battery fire, or 1 kilowatt battery, will release between 500 and 6,000 litres of ignitable vapour. Now, all it needs is a spark, and if there's lithium-ion batteries going into thermal runaway, it will get a spark. So if that cloud is sitting around the vehicle at the scene, that's a potential disaster, which is underlined, if anyone's seen it, by the Potter's Bar bus fire, where you can clearly see the vapour ignite around the bus. So we've put together a 7-hour course, it's IMI accredited, and we believe it gives the recovery operators, and we're training blue light services as well, the best possible chance to keep the customer safe and to keep the recovery driver and the police and the ambulance safe as well. But as I said, these are particular circumstances. A battery can go into runaway from overcharge, from battery damage, or if you're in Liverpool, where we train the police, from bullet holes. No, I'm not making that up.
Well, let's hope we don't experience too many of those. Okay, across to you then, Vic. So involved in this process, and the recovery is one element, if you like, but what are the other kind of implications in terms of managing an EV claim? We saw earlier that repair costs, are roughly the same in terms of how the land lies there. So what other bits are sort of implicated in terms of that claim?
Sure. Okay. So obviously you can already see the complexities of all of the different information sources that are available across the industry. I think the challenge in a claims journey is not necessarily driven by manufacturer differences, but is driven by the circumstances of the incident itself, fully understanding that incident, and then, in a nutshell, working with people that are qualified to take the onward journey of that customer's claim. So it's as it's always been in this industry, it's about information that's available to you. You need as much information at first notification of loss as to what's happened, the vehicle that it's happened to, the damage profile, and then you need to be able to translate that through into the specification of that vehicle and highlight the risk that's then involved. This is all about risk mitigation. It's no different to we've ever done in a claims journey. It's about understanding the components that you're trying to make a decision upon. Now, the challenge is that this is new, but it's always new. There's always new, even prior to EV, we had many iterations of different makes, different models that came with challenges, that came with differences, that came with different repair capability requirements, and yet we've got through every iteration of that. This is just another iteration of information that we need to make the right decision. The safety aspect is the thing that scares everybody. And I think that's the thing, as an industry, we are responsible for looking after customers. So we need to identify really quickly whether or not there is a safety risk on the side of the road. If there is, we need to deploy experts into the mix that know what they're doing, that can do the right checks, and then it's the onward journey. I think you made a really key point a moment ago. Right? We need to be informed. So as it comes through to claim, as it goes through to repair, there is a handover. Has the vehicle been quarantined? Has it been charged down correctly? Right? All of that matters. When it gets to a body shop, the journey becomes a little bit more simple. In terms of if the body shop has qualified IMI technicians on site, EV bays, EV equipment and tooling, insulated tooling available to it, then as long as we know the rules of engagement and we know what's happened to the vehicle, we can deal with it. It's also about deferring it back across to the manufacturer at the appropriate point in time, which again is informed decision making. So we need information. And we need information from the customer, and we need information from the manufacturers, and we need information from the experts in our supply chain to pull it all together to ensure that we protect the customer, we protect the body shop, we protect technicians, and also that we deal with some of the challenges. We talked, I think, about elongated cycle times. You are baking in different elements to the claims journey, so you've got to talk to the customer without scaring the customer and the process, which is really easy to do when they're at the side of the road and you're saying, I need to make sure this vehicle is safe. You also need the customer to understand that there is a potential that you've got additional days baked in for it to be quarantined. You've got additional time baked in terms of charging it down, charging it up. And then you've potentially got longer paint times because of the makeup of the vehicle. So it's information, and we've always dealt with information. But I don't think we have enough, and that's our biggest challenge at this point in time. I don't think until things start to happen, until liabilities start to work their way through, I don't think we have enough information at this point. That said, that doesn't prevent us from making good decisions.
Go on, Jeff. I can see you're keen to jump in there.
Richard, who's my partner, has been training London Fire Brigade on vehicle fire investigation for 27 years. Back in May, he went to Norway with a few universities and some car manufacturers, and they actually burned 5 EVs and did a full fire investigation course afterwards. But he says, and I say every day, Victoria's absolutely right. We're learning new stuff every single day, new challenges on this, and I'm talking about blue light services, recovery at the side of the road when it's gone as bad as it can. And that's why we have a Dropbox link. We update people every single month. But I think the biggest issue now, and that we've seen, is people saying, well, it's too costly to run the training. Well, I understand that because of having people off site for a day, and it's a lot of money. But, we've seen so many circumstances now where adjacent buildings have disappeared. Body shops or dealers, car parks, because people didn't know what they're dealing with. And our only intention, people say I scaremonger. I'm not scaremongering, I'm passionate about it because we're doing it with the right intention to keep people safe. And I'm sure everyone saw over the weekend a woman and her 2 children killed by an e-bike fire in Cambridgeshire, which is just so tragic. And the fire brigade's advice, make sure your smoke alarms are up to date. No, make sure you charge it outside, not in the house. So the fire brigade are even being consciously incompetent. That's been our findings.
Okay, so the call is communication, knowledge sharing across the industry. Again, something that's really required, really needed. Martin, from a sort of vehicle manufacturer's perspective, and obviously you can only speak on behalf of JLR, but what stage are you at with that kind of process? And will those relationships continue to evolve and change? Will there be more knowledge sharing with VMs across the sector, do we think?
I think we're as an industry we're really in the initial steps of this, because I think the other thing that the challenges that vehicle manufacturers have is when they produce new vehicles, they produce new batteries, then they produce the safety rules around those, they change. So every single new vehicle comes out, it will come out with more efficient batteries, etc., but it will be different. And comes with that, then comes the safety rules. And then because of the safety rules, you need to train. And we've had some changes within safety rules. I mean, it stepped us back a while, and we're back on track with that. But I think, more importantly, we need to make sure it all comes back to safety. We need to make sure that all that information is available, and we are doing our best to make sure all our technicians are trained. But it's not just the technicians; it's the front of house. It's everybody within the business needs to be aware of the changes. and what is required. But I think it's volume led as well, and as you said, and obviously as the more volume comes, I can remember sitting on an SMT meeting and everybody's talking about ADAS and ADAS and ADAS, and I'm thinking, well, ADAS is here. It's been here a while. You need to be focusing on electric vehicle because we've got such a shortfall of people that will be able to reach the high levels of level 3 or level 4 or powering vehicles down. I think we have a massive shortfall, and that's where we need to drive our focus, I think.
By the way, that's very much a two-way street, I imagine, from a vehicle manufacturer. You want to learn from industry as much as industry wants to learn from yourselves. Yeah. I'm sure is the case. Vic, I just wanted to come across to you in terms of breaking these elements down, i.e., these changes. Do you kind of categorise them short, medium, kind of long-term challenges? I.e., give us 5 years' time, and it will be normal. EVs will, just become a natural part of the work mix, and we won't be so concerned with certain elements of that.
Yeah, I think it probably ties in to my previous comments. Everything becomes normal after a period in time. Change is a given. We're going to continue to evolve in what we know about EVs, what the next iteration of EVs are. We are getting information at this point in time. So already, very quickly in the last year, 2 years, we do now have databases of information around damage profiles with EVs. We have a lot more experience working backwards and forwards with manufacturers in terms of what needs to be referred across to a manufacturer to deal with, what stays in a body shop, the training that we need. It keeps coming in the same iterations it always has. I don't think there is I think potentially 3 years ago, we all thought there were 5 and 10 year plans in this world. And I think we've just learned that there quite simply aren't. It keeps moving. We don't know what's around the corner. All we can do is everything is based on data now. Everything we do is based on data going forwards. And I think if we look forwards, we're on a journey with EV. I think there is a general perception or a concept that there is something beyond EV that comes. So for now, I think the next 5 years is let's understand this, let's get it right, let's mitigate any safety aspects that we can. Let's make sure we've got experts in the mix. And we will continue to grow and invest in our businesses. And I think the market is changing now. It's starting to adapt and allow, certainly from a supply chain point of view, allow the supply chain to invest back in their businesses. So I think, again, the next 5 years is about repairers being ready, qualified, investing in their businesses, being able to work with manufacturers, being able to work with recovery agents, and ensuring that we're providing the service. Beyond there, the changes will keep coming. And we're getting better at data, we're getting better at triaging, we're getting better at automation, and we're getting better at looking after the customer journey as part of that. Customers are much more informed than they've ever been previously. And I think that's the fear aspect. It's very easy to ignite fear quickly with the customer. And I think the more the customer knows, the more the customer starts to get involved in the journey. And we need to be experts in that space. We need to make sure that we're offering that. So I think 5 years we're on a journey. We'll know more and more about EV. It'll become normal. It is normal now to a large extent. And I think beyond that, the next iteration will come in. And I think the relationships have to keep building. I think there's always this misconception to some extent that manufacturers and insurers and repairers and recovery agents are all very separate entities, and they can't be. They're all centered around a customer. So we have to work together. We might have the odd moments where we don't particularly want to work together, but I think we have to work together because ultimately we're selling to a consumer. And that service is to the end customer.
One customer at the end of the day. Jeff, you sort of wanted to raise
Adrian and Dean earlier, very grateful. Your presentation was fantastic. And Dean made a couple of points there where you need to train. We've had a lot of recovery agents saying, I can spare one person to train. And Dean was talking about make sure everyone's aware. And in fair play to NWVA again, where they've trained the control centre staff as well. Because at that point, that's where it can go wrong. If you don't identify the type of alternative fuel vehicle. I mean, even one of our big concerns is retrofits and the lack of legislation around them. So we could be going out to a Morris Minor that might have been converted to an EV where the whole front end is basically lithium-ion batteries and they are the crumple zone. But if you don't find out, and NWVA trained all their control centre staff and the drivers who go out to scenes of such magnitude and seriousness so that they know what they're doing. I'm now sitting on IMI Tech Safe and we're talking about certification as well, because We've done some training for the AA, they asked us to do, because they recognised that they had a piece missing there as well. A guy called Dave Carson, who's the police contracts manager for Merseyside for the AA. He saw the need for it and took it back into the AA. And sadly, he came across a guy who is the expert in the AA because he's certified to IMI level 4. And our course is certified to level 3. And I raised this at IMI TechSafe that's misleading, because the levels 1, 2, 3 and 4 are about dealing with the vehicle when it's not, doesn't have potential battery damage and isn't at risk of going into thermal runaway. So they've agreed now that we're now consulting on the certification going forward for blue light services and recovery. And I think that's absolutely essential, and it needs to somehow be brought into regulation, that people picking these things up at the side of the road are qualified. And as Victoria said, the most important thing, know what's been done to it before you touch it, all the way through the entire journey. Keep that going all the way through, so you know how, and we all, measure battery temperatures. Be aware of what's been done to it. If there's a risk of thermal runaway, have the right quarantine areas so that it's not adjacent to a building or other cars that are going to go up with it. Very, very simple stuff that's entirely preventable if we keep up with the training and the learning, which, as I said, we learn every single day because it is new. But Victoria's absolutely right. In 5 years, it will just be the norm.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, we've got lots of questions coming in on Slido. Nick, you teed up with one or two?
Yeah, excuse me. Lots of questions, very, very popular. I think, Mark, this is perhaps one that could be posed to the whole panel if we've got time. So how does changing battery chemistry, variations of battery type fitment within the same models and variants affect the guidance at roadside and beyond?
Okay, so battery technology will continue to evolve, obviously. There's a lot of work going into sodium ion at the moment. With lithium-ion batteries, in terms of the piece we do, the first release of vapour is hydrogen fluoride gas, so you need to not breathe that in because that will turn into hydrofluoric acid. It's just about having the right equipment to deal with it. But if it's a lithium-ion battery and it has damage, it will behave in the same way as any lithium-ion battery.
Go for it.
Okay, put everybody on the spot now. Who on the panel owns or drives an EV?
I do.
I didn't think Jeff did.
I think, so I do. I'll be really honest for a second here. I also drive a diesel because the infrastructure quite simply isn't in play. And to add a little bit more context to it, I also have an EV that is a random story. I had a rodent incident where it ate through the wiring looms and everything else, kind of right. It took 6 months. It's a Jag.
Oh, wow. You have to save that for the last minute.
It took 6 months to get a part for the vehicle. And that's not anybody's fault in the mix, right? It takes time for tooling to get up to speed. It takes time for even manufacturers. I think my perception is the manufacturers are ahead of us in terms of the repair community. Mm-hmm. But actually the challenge is right across the piece in terms of technicians that are qualified, the tooling switches that we've seen across the continent. So kind of, there are challenges. So I do, in answer to that question, but there are still challenges that make it quite difficult to transition into that 100%.
Yeah. Thank you.
Like it. So closing comments then, if there was one thing that you could kind of say to the industry as a whole, keep it short. Martin, what would your message be about electric vehicles at the moment?
I think it is new. We've had new things before. I think as an industry, we will deal with it. I think we just need to be very aware it's different, and there will come with, what comes with that is more expensive, more downtime, more expensive. Every single time we talk about training, it will add cost and cost and cost. It will make technicians more expensive because you've trained them. But I think we've started this journey. I think we're in a fairly good place. But I think it's about developing our people and developing our skills and knowledge.
100%.
Jeff, Your parting words?
Just, I think, be open enough and honest enough with yourself to learn. And as I said, my partner's been doing this for donkey's years and he learns every day. Martin's absolutely right. Find the training. Dean, what he said, find the training that works for you and is relevant to what you need to do. But realise that the journey is going to change and go for tangents every day. As long as you stay ahead as much as you can of the technology and understand what you're dealing with, implement the measures that are necessary to keep you and your premises safe, and you'll be fine.
Vic?
I think my parting comments would be that we need to just work together as an industry to get through this. There is no logical reason that we break this down into different sections and tackle it independently. The only way we get through this is to be informed from the start of the journey to the end of the journey, and to make safe and good decisions.
Good stuff. Fantastic.
Can I ask a question?
Well, you can.
We have one gap in the piece we're doing for fire, for police and for recovery operators. Obviously, when a vehicle like that burns, it shoots pieces of lithium-ion battery all over the place. And there was an incident the weekend or last week at Heathrow where a Mercedes Vito electric van wasn't charging, caught fire. Fire brigade went to the scene. And to clean up the lithium-ion batteries that were spent and in the road, they called one of the, the little road sweepers that goes along, going beep, beep, beep. And they said to the disposal company, you will dispose of those properly, won't you? And they just said yes. Now, lithium-ion batteries, once they're damaged and out of the vehicle, that's transportation of dangerous goods. And, that's a piece that we still haven't got a solution to. What do you do at the recovery scene with the spent and burnt out lithium-ion batteries? Where do they go and how do you dispose of them safely? It's like you've seen these tanks they have in Germany where if it's a severe one, they'll pull out a crane and they'll lower the vehicle into an enormous tank of water. Well, it costs 90 pence per litre to clean that water once the car's gone out, and it won't put the vehicle fire out because plasma will burn underwater. What it will do is contain it. So we have a missing piece in the whole thing that we do is what can we do with the spent lithium-ion batteries after we've recovered a scene, because you can't put them in the vehicle and you can't put them on the recovery truck. They need specialist disposal.
So there's a business proposition to anyone in the room who fancies something new. I know a few people in the audience who'll be thinking right now, yes, that's not a bad idea. But thank you so much to our three panellists. Been fantastic. Martin, Jeff and Vic, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, guys.